Hello and welcome to Right Sports Talk. My name is Zach. We are officially through the first week of NFL games. In my picks for week 1, I had a record of 12-4. Right now you're gearing up, getting ready for week 2. So let's get into my picks for week 2. Week 2 kicks off Thursday night with the Buffalo Bills taking on the Miami Dolphins. The Buffalo Bills were 1-0, coming off a victory over the Arizona Cardinals. It was a bit of a close game, but they ultimately wound up doing enough to get the close win over Arizona. And Miami Dolphins also 1-0, they also were coming off a close victory over the Jacksonville Jaguars, in which they were down by 17 points early and managed to make the comeback. My pick for this game is going to be Miami. I just like their offense more than I like Buffalo's. Buffalo gave up 28 points to Arizona. Granted, one of those was a kick return touchdown, but I think Arizona's offense looked kind of better than they should have against this Buffalo Bills defense. Because of that, I think Miami's very well-rounded, very explosive offense is going to do very well against this Bills defense. And I don't know if the Bills offense is going to be able to keep up with the Dolphins offense. Especially because it's still looking like it's wide receiver by committee for Buffalo. James Cook looked very good in their game at running back, but Dalton Kincaid in a very quiet game at tight end. Khalil Shakir, Keon Coleman, and Curtis Samuel all kind of got a few catches, but nobody really stuck out as being that number one guy. So I really think that Miami is going to be able to play just well enough on defense to kind of slow down the Bills offense, and this Miami offense is going to, like they do every year early in the season, have explosive games. I think this is going to be one of their big games offensively. Moving on to the start of the Sunday games, you have the New Orleans Saints, who are 1-0, coming off of a victory over the Carolina Panthers, taking on the Dallas Cowboys, who are also 1-0, coming off of a victory to the Cleveland Browns. The Saints looked very good in their game against Carolina. I don't know if that has more to do with the Saints being good or just how bad Carolina looks. But the Saints did play very well. They played very good defense against Carolina. So maybe that can look to kind of improve off of that. And the Dallas Cowboys, coming off of a win over the Cleveland Browns, the Cowboys looked much better than I thought they were going to do. If you recall, I picked Cleveland to beat Dallas last week because I didn't think their offense had enough to kind of get past that Cleveland defense. But their offense, with Dak Prescott, CeeDee Lamb, Brandon Cooks made some good plays. I believe scored a touchdown. Ezekiel Elliott got in the end zone. Both the rookie offensive linemen didn't really make too many mistakes. So they did play way better than I thought they were going to, and their defense still looks very good with Mike Zimmer as the defensive coordinator. So my pick for this game is actually going to be the Dallas Cowboys. I just think that I don't know how good the Saints are it was a big win points-wise over Carolina, but it was just Carolina. The Cowboys had a more impressive win in week 1. I think they're going to be able to kind of carry that over. Still be able to play good offense, although Jake Ferguson is dealing with, I believe it is an MCL sprain that is kind of, day to day, week to week, unclear if he's going to play. But I do think they have enough offensively to, keep up with the Saints, and I think their defense is going to play pretty well against New Orleans offense. So I am going to pick the Cowboys in this game. Next up, we have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who are 1-0, coming off of a victory over the Washington Commanders, taking on the Detroit Lions, who are also 1-0, coming off of a victory over the Los Angeles Rams. The Buccaneers, offensively especially, looked very good in week one. Baker Mayfield had 4 passing touchdowns, and Mike Evans, got in the end zone. Chris Godwin looked very good. Jalen McMillan, their rookie wide receiver, looked very good. So passing wise, their offense looked very good. Their rush offense was okay. Rachaad White didn't really have that great of a game, but pretty good. Their defense looked good against Washington. They just played a very good game week one. The Detroit Lions, coming off of an overtime victory over the Rams. The Lions' defense actually looked very good. Their secondary especially looked much better than it did last season. Their offense, passing game-wise, struggled a little bit, especially Amon-Ra St. Brown. Wasn't able to get a lot of catches, but Jameson Williams went off. Jahmyr Gibbs did really good in the running game, and I believe he scored a touchdown. David Montgomery scored the game-winning touchdown in overtime. So once their offense kind of got going, they did look very good. My pick for this game is going to be the Detroit Lions. I just think their defense is going to play well enough to kind of contain parts of that passing game for Tampa Bay. And their offense is going to be able to at least run the football effectively against the Buccaneers. So I am going to pick the Detroit Lions to get the win here against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Next up, you have the Indianapolis Colts, who are 0-1, taking on the Green Bay Packers, who are also 0-1. Week 1, the Colts lost a close game to the Texans. Anthony Richardson showed some flashes, although he did only complete 9 passes, but in those 9 completions, he threw for over 200 yards, and I believe 2 touchdowns. He had a couple deep ball touchdowns, one of which where he threw it 65 yards after he had slipped back in his drop back and wasn't really able to get all of his weight underneath him, but just let the ball fly to Alec Pierce and went 65 yards down the field. Looked very good. Their defense did not look all that good against the Houston Texans. They had some struggles. Houston was doing a good job passing the ball, good job rushing the ball with Joe Mixon. The Colts defense could use, had a little be desired from that defense. It didn't really show a whole lot. So the Colts defense could have looked better. They didn't look really as good as I thought they would. And for the Green Bay Packers, coming off a loss to the Philadelphia Eagles, right at the end of that game, Jordan Love unfortunately suffered an MCL sprain in the second to last play of the game. As of now, he's expected to miss sometime between 3 to 6 weeks. So he is not going to be playing in this game. It looks like it is going to be Malik Willis, who is going to be starting the game for the Green Bay Packers. Malik Willis has 3 career starts since 2022. All of them came in that year 2022, in which he has 0 touchdown passes and 3 interceptions. So, I have a lot of question marks about this Green Bay Packers offense. A little bit of question marks about their defense. They gave up 2 rushing touchdowns and a receiving touchdown to Saquon Barkley when they played the Eagles. They also A.J. Brown had a very big game in the receiving game. Had over 100 yards and a touchdown. I don't know what their defense is going to look like. Don't know what their offense is going to look like without Jordan Love. For that reason, I am going to pick the Indianapolis Colts. I think Anthony Richardson is going to, play well enough to get the win. He's going to make probably some very freakish throws, some very athletic plays in the run game. I don't know if this Packers defense is going to be able to stop them, and I think that the Colts defense can have a bit of a bounce back game against Malik Willis as being the starting quarterback for these Green Bay Packers. Moving on, you have the New York Jets, who are 0-1, taking on the Tennessee Titans, who are also 0-1. My pick for this game is going to be the Jets. The Tennessee Titans offensively started off good against the Bears. They got a 17-point lead and then just didn't get any more points, and they wound up losing the game because of how well the Bears' defense and special teams played. So I think that the Jets are definitely going to be able to play better offensively than the Bears did, and I think their defense is better than the Bears. So I think the Jets are going to be able to get a bit of a bounce back win and get the win over the Tennessee Titans. Moving on, you have the San Francisco 49ers, who are 1-0, taking on the Minnesota Vikings, who are also 1-0. The 49ers are coming off a win over the New York Jets. The Minnesota Vikings are coming off a win over the New York Giants. My pick for this game is going to be the 49ers. As good as Minnesota looked against the Giants, I don't think they will look nearly as good against San Francisco. I don't think Sam Darnold will play as well as he did. He probably make more mistakes than he did against the Giants. And the 49ers did not have Christian McCaffrey for their game against the Jets. They didn't have Christian McCaffrey this week. It looks like they might not. There's a possibility they could not have him next week as well, as he continues to deal with his calf/Achilles injury. Jordan Mason played very well as the workhorse running back. Deebo Samuel did some things in the running, and it's like kind of the number 2 run option, and did some good receiving game. Things in the receiving game, and the 49ers defense also played very well. So I do think that the San Francisco 49ers are going to be able to beat the Vikings, even if the Niners still do not have Christian McCaffrey. Moving on, you have the Seattle Seahawks, who are 1-0, taking on the New England Patriots, who are also 1-0. The Seahawks are coming off of kind of an ugly win over the Denver Broncos, in which the Broncos scored 2 safeties on Seattle, and Seattle kind of struggled offensively for most of the game. The defense started off slow. Geno Smith started off, I believe, early in the game throwing an interception. So they just started off very sloppy, very slow, and wound up getting a pretty ugly win. The New England Patriots are coming off of a win over the Cincinnati Bengals, in which Ramondre Stevenson was pretty much their entire offense. He had 120 yards rushing out of their 170 total rushing yards. To put that kind of in perspective, Jacoby Brissett had 121 yards passing on the entire game. So Ramondre Stevenson almost outrushed their quarterback's passing production. On top of that, their defense played very well. Keon White got 2.5 sacks. They forced and recovered a fumble at the goal line. So they just played very good, very stout defense, and their offense was able to play just good enough to win, which is all they needed, with Jacoby Brissett being their game manager, Ramondre Stevenson carrying the ball for them all game, and then their defense just doing enough, holding the Bengals offense to very, very few points. My pick for this game is going to be the New England Patriots. I do not pick them in back-to-back weeks just because I am a Patriots fan. This is another game that I honestly think they could win, especially if Seattle starts slow. If Seattle starts like they did against Denver, I think New England's going to be able to, with Ramondre, run over them. Jacoby Brissett is going to be able to again manage the game. One of the big reasons the Broncos lost is because Bo Nix, who's a rookie quarterback, had 2 interceptions. I don't think Jacoby Brissett will do that. He will do a very good job of hanging on to the ball, not forcing turnovers, not trying to force anything he shouldn't. Again, I think Ramondre is going to do a pretty good job of carrying the load in the running game, and their defenses, I think, will do very well. I think Christian Gonzalez can do a good job of shutting down DK Metcalf. Christian Gonzalez, when he was lining up against Jamar Chase on Sunday against the Bengals, only gave up 3 catches for 14 yards. I think he will play very well against DK. Very, very much like the Patriots defense against this Seattle offense. So I am going to pick the Patriots to get the job done. Next up, you have the New York Giants, who are 0-1, taking on the Washington Commanders, who are also 0-1. As I mentioned earlier, the Giants lost to the Minnesota Vikings, and they just did not look good really across the board. Their offense couldn't get anything going. Daniel Jones threw an interception that wound up getting returned for a touchdown. Their running game couldn't really get going. Their defense couldn't stop a whole lot. They just didn't look all that great. You have the Washington Commanders coming off their loss to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, in which they looked okay. Their defense, their pass defense specifically, does not look good. It didn't look good last year. It still doesn't look all that good. But their offense kind of looked pretty good with Jaden Daniels at the rookie quarterback, mainly for what he could do with his legs, scoring 2 rushing touchdowns. You also have Brian Robinson perform very well in the run game and catch a few passes. They didn't do all that well in the receiving game. I believe their leading receiver was either Luke McCaffrey or Terry McLaurin, and they only had a handful of catches and not a whole lot of yards. So definitely left you wanting more in the passing game. But I am going to go with the Commanders to win this game. They looked better against a pretty good team compared to how the Giants looked against the Minnesota Vikings. So although I do believe the Giants' passing offense will look a little bit better against this Commanders' pass defense, I am going to pick the Commanders. I do think that they're going to be able to do enough offensively with Jaden Daniels, especially in the run game, to get the win here. Next up, you have the Los Angeles Chargers, who are 1-0, taking on the Carolina Panthers, who are 0-1. The Chargers are coming off of a win over the Vegas Raiders. The Carolina Panthers are coming off of just a terrible loss to the New Orleans Saints. They lost 47-0 and could just not get anything going. Chargers, as I mentioned, coming off the win over the Raiders, did some good things in the run game. J.K. Dobbins had over 130 rushing yards on 10 carries. He had a couple big runs that he busted. Ladd McConkey got a receiving touchdown. Their defense looked good. Joe Alt, their first-round draft pick from this past year, looked very good against Max Crosby. So I do think the Chargers win this game. I think they win this game. And they're going to be able to really run the ball very well against this Panthers defense. The Panthers have also lost starting defensive tackle Dwayne Brown to an injury. He's out for the season, so that's a big blow to their defense. So I do think the Chargers are going to be able to kind of run all over them this game, get an early lead, keep that lead. And I don't know if it'll be as big of a gap in score, but I don't really see it being all that close. And I do think the Chargers get the win here. Next up, you have the Cleveland Browns, who are 0-1, taking on the Jacksonville Jaguars, who are also 0-1. As I mentioned earlier, the Browns losing to the Cowboys, and the Jaguars losing to the Dolphins. The Browns defensively looked okay. Like the Cowboys were able to get a couple touchdowns and had a couple big plays. The biggest issue with this Cleveland Browns team, their offense, primarily Deshaun Watson. Deshaun Watson did not look good at all. If Deshaun Watson could have played like just an average, middle of the road quarterback, this team would have had a much better chance. But Deshaun Watson did not look like an NFL quarterback on Sunday, and the offense very much struggled because of it. They were missing a few key pieces on the offensive line. They're missing a couple starters. So, that didn't help, especially going up against the good defense of the Dallas Cowboys. But Deshaun Watson just made too many mistakes. Offense made a bunch of mistakes. I don't know if I can trust them if Deshaun Watson doesn't look like he's going to improve. And he has not looked like he's going to improve since he's been in Cleveland. The Jaguars suffering a heartbreaking loss to the Miami Dolphins, in which they had a 17-point lead. They had a chance to go up by more. Travis Etienne fumbled on his way into the end zone. The Dolphins recovered for a touchback. Very next play, or very next series, I actually think it was literally the very next play. The Miami Dolphins 80-yard touchdown pass to Tyreek Hill. They get the momentum in their corner, and Jaguars just couldn't recover from it. But I am going to pick the Jaguars in this game because I don't know what Cleveland's offense is going to look like. I think the Jaguars offense is going to do okay against this Cleveland defense as long as they can hang on to the ball and not turn it over. And I don't know what this Cleveland offense is going to look like with Deshaun Watson. At this point, I think Jameis Winston would be a better option to throw in at quarterback. So that Browns offense, it just doesn't look good with Deshaun Watson. Maybe he's going to be able to, improve, but he hasn't really shown any consistency since he's been in Cleveland. Next up, you have the Las Vegas Raiders, who are 0-1, taking on the Baltimore Ravens, who are also 0-1. The Raiders coming off the loss to the Los Angeles Chargers, and the Ravens coming off of a heartbreaking loss in the opening game to the Kansas City Chiefs, in which they were driving down the field on the final drive to win the game, and on 4th and goal, Isaiah Likely looks like he catches a game-winning touchdown pass. His toe was out of bounds by that much. Just a quarter of an inch. His toe was out of bounds. No touchdown. Turnover on downs. Game over. But up to that point, the Ravens did look very good. Obviously, Isaiah Likely had a very good game. Zay Flowers looked good. Derrick Henry got in the end zone. Their defense looked to do some pretty good things against that Chiefs offense. The offense is very difficult to stop. So I am going to pick the Ravens in this game. I think they are just the better team right now. I think they are going to be able to, run the ball much like the Chargers did against this Raiders offense. I think they're going to maybe be able to force Gardner Minshew to make some mistakes. I just like them to get the win here. Next up, you have the Los Angeles Rams, who are 0-1, taking on the Arizona Cardinals, who are also 0-1. As I mentioned earlier, the Cardinals in that close loss to the Bills, in which they scored 28 points. And their offense looked pretty good. And then you have the Los Angeles Rams coming off of their overtime loss to the Detroit Lions. But they looked really good in that game. Unfortunately for them, Puka Nacua did suffer a knee injury in that game, and he is expected to miss roughly a month of action. Actually, he has been placed on IR, so he is going to miss a minimum of 4 games. But I do like, let's see what they have in Cooper Kupp in the receiving game. Demaryius Robinson is a very good receiver. They still have Kyron Williams. Still have Matthew Stafford, but their offensive line was shuffled around a little bit in that game. So, you got to wonder what they're going to look like. Their defense did play pretty well at points. They looked very good against that Lions defense or Lions offense. And the Arizona Cardinals, their defense didn't look all that good against Buffalo. They started off the game looking good, but they don't really have much of a pass rush, and then they weren't able to stop, Josh Allen from running around. Granted, they don't really have to worry about Matthew Stafford doing that, but the Rams have their established number 1 receiver, even with Puka being out, in Cooper Kupp. So I think Cooper Kupp could have a very good game in this game. I think their defense is going to play well enough to kind of limit the scoring of the Cardinals. I think the Cardinals will still, keep it close. The Cardinals are a very fiery team. They, are very good at staying in games. but I do think the Rams are going to win this one. So I am picking the Rams here. I just think they're going to be able to do too much and squeak out a close win. Next up, you have the Pittsburgh Steelers, who are 1-0, taking on the Denver Broncos, who are 0-1. The Steelers are coming off of a win over the Atlanta Falcons, in which they did not score a touchdown. They won 18-15, and all they had was field goals. Their MVP for their game was their kicker. Their defense played very well. So I am going to pick the Steelers in this game. I think their defense is going to play very well again against this Broncos offense. I think they're going to be able to rattle Bo Nix. TJ Watt is, I think, going to have a couple of sacks in this game, really getting Bo Nix's head right from the start. And they're just going to kind of be able to build from the momentum on that. It looks like Justin Fields is going to get the start in this game. I think Justin Fields could have a good game against this defense. George Pickens might be shut down a little bit by Patrick Surtain, but maybe this is a Najee Harris, Jalen Warren type game with a Pat Freiermuth, and Justin Fields getting it done more so with his scrambling and running ability as opposed to his passing ability. But I do think that the Steelers are going to be able to do enough. Just kind of pounding the ball with Najee Harris, who had 20 carries last week, and maybe Jalen Warren in there, and maybe some runs with Justin Fields, and then just their defense just getting after Bo Nix. Next up, you have the Cincinnati Bengals taking on who are 0-1, taking on the Kansas City Chiefs, who are 1-0. The Bengals coming off of that loss to New England Patriots. The Chiefs coming off of that victory over the Baltimore Ravens. My pick for this game is going to be the Chiefs. A big reason for this, the Bengals start slow. They started slow against the Patriots, and it cost them. I think they are still going to start slow against the Chiefs, and that'll really cost them. But one of the main reasons I like the Chiefs in this game is the Bengals' run defense. It just wasn't there. It's not that good. They had no answers for Ramondre Stevenson. And I think Isaiah Pacheco is going to have even a bigger game than Ramondre did against this run defense. And obviously you still have Patrick Mahomes. You have Xavier Worthy, who looked very good in his rookie debut. You have Rashee Rice, who looked very good, kind of taking maybe more of that Travis Kelce role in the offense, getting the over the middle passes, short gains that he just, kind of take for first downs. Maybe being more of Patrick Mahomes' security blanket. And this defense, their defense still looks really good. Like, Chris Jones is still there, looks really good. Their linebacking core, their secondary. So their defense looks like a very, very good defense, kind of building on what they had last year. So I do think that the Chiefs are going to be able to get the job done here. Moving on, your Sunday night game, you have the Chicago Bears, who are 1-0, taking on the Houston Texans, who are also 1-0. The Bears coming off of a very, very sloppy win over the Tennessee Titans, in which their defense and their special teams won them this game. They got a defensive touchdown and a special teams touchdown in this game. Caleb Williams didn't look great in his rookie debut. He only had 93 yards passing. He also had some plays where he got sacked in the backfield, trying to kind of, much like he did in college, evade out, kind of spin around, make stuff happen, but just wasn't able to do it against NFL talent. So, the Chicago Bears offense really didn't show much to get excited about. Hopefully they can kind of bounce back and build off of their game. And their defense looks very good. The defense looks great compared to kind of what we expected. I think their defense is still going to play very well against the Houston Texans. The Houston Texans are coming off a win over the Indianapolis Colts, which C.J. Stroud looked very good. Nico Collins looked very good. He looks like he could kind of be turning into the true number one receiver for this team. Stephon Diggs caught a couple of touchdown passes. Joe Mixon had 30 carries in that game. He looked really good. Defense was okay. They played well enough to get the win, which is all that matters. So I am going to pick the Texans in this game. I think their offense is going to be able to play better than the Titans did, and I do think the Bears offense will look better. Rome Odunze went out with an injury; he could miss a few weeks. Keenan Allen went out with an injury; he could miss a few weeks. So they do still have DJ Moore as that number one receiving option. But other than that, I don't know who they go to. Maybe it's Cole Kmet. Maybe they, give the ball to DeAndre Swift more to try and get stuff going. But I don't think that their offense is going to be able to do quite enough to get the win over the Texans. Now, Monday night, you have the Atlanta Falcons, who are 0-1, taking on the Philadelphia Eagles, who are 1-0. The Falcons, I picked them to win last week. I was on that Arizona hype train for week 1. I think Kirk Cousins is going to come in. This offense is going to look so much better. Kyle Pitts scored a touchdown. But other than that, Bijan had an okay game. Rushing-wise, Drake London was pretty quiet in the receiving game. Kirk Cousins was just under pressure all game long. And, making a bunch of mistakes. Their defense played pretty good. Only holding the Steelers to only 18 points and not giving up any touchdowns. But unfortunately, it was not enough to get the win because their offense just couldn't get anything going. And you have the Philadelphia Eagles coming off the win over the Green Bay Packers, in which defensively their pass rush looked really good. Their secondary looked improved from last year. Although they did give up a few touchdowns to Jaden Reed in the passing game. Their offense looked really good. They came out slow with a couple of turnovers on the first couple drives, but after that, Saquon got into a rhythm. He had 3 total touchdowns. As I talked about, A.J. Brown having 100 yards and a touchdown. Their O-line did have a little bit of a struggle with their new center, but it looks like they got it all figured out, and hopefully working towards being a more cohesive unit and not making those type of mistakes. So I am going to go with the Philadelphia Eagles in this game. Offensively, I like them better than the Atlanta Falcons. I think their offense is gonna far outperform what the Falcons can do, and defensively, kind of coincides with defensively. I think they're going to be able to get after Kirk Cousins. Like I said, their pass rush played very well against Green Bay. I think that's going to continue against Atlanta. Their secondary, I think, will continue to play very well, and I just think that they get the win here. So those are my picks for week 2. Let me know in the comments who you guys got for this week, who you think is going to win. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Until next time, see you.